Hi everyone, I'm Calsyanna. Our group is covering Chapter 5 from How Economics Explains the World by Andrew Lay. This chapter looks at how trade and technology took off in the 19th century and why institutions played such a big role in shaping who actually benefited from that growth. I'll tell you just a brief summary about the chapter. The chapter shows how the 1800s marked a turning point in the global economy. Trade expanded rapidly through new transport technologies and treaties. Industrialization transformed production and economies grew much faster than before. But the benefits were uneven. Some countries surged ahead while others were held back by imperial trade systems. In response, new institutions like corporations, labor unions, welfare policies, and public health systems emerged to manage the social and economic consequences. The common thread is how trade, technology, and institutions interacted to shape growth, inequality, and living standards. On the next slide, I'll be going over the core idea of this chapter. So, the core idea is that trade and new technologies greatly increased productivity in the 19th century, but institutions and power determined who benefited from those gains. Overall, output rose, goods became cheaper, and transport became faster, but the gains weren't automatically or evenly shared. This helps explain why Britain prospered under free trade, while trade was often enforced elsewhere through imperial power. So, trade and technology drove growth, but institutions shaped the outcomes. On the next slide, I'll be saying what exactly changed during this period. So, what exactly changed during this time was the scale and speed of economic life. Trade and travel expanded far beyond local markets, connecting countries and continents. Industrial technology and corporations replaced small scale production with factories and mass output. These changes created a new winner and loser, increasing inequality, while rapid urbanization reshaped cities, health, and living standards. As problems grew, institutions and governments began responding with new policies and regulations.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Feng, and let's take a look at the process of free trade and industrialization. I'll try to explain with this loop you can see on the screen, which consists of policy shift, capital accumulation, technology improvement, and global integration, and reform. So these are in no particular order, as changes in one element of the loop often impacts the other aspects. An example is what Calsyanna mentioned earlier. Technology innovations can cause a shift in policies, which can also redirect the flow of capital. And if we take a look to the right, the first thing we can see is policy shifts. As we know, policy played a huge part in free trade, whether it's Britain's repeal of the Corn Law or the most favored nation clause. Policy change played a primary role in the process of global trade network. So in 1846, Britain repealed the Corn Law, which is a law that imposed high tariffs on imported grains. Many consider this the marking of a shift from protectionism to free trade. And as free trade spread throughout Europe and the globe, more policies and treaties were put in place to protect the fairness and the stability of the trade. As policies shift in favor of free trade, more opportunities arose, and people are investing in things like business, manufacturing, like facilities like factories, and just trade in general, right? And as we can see in the diagram, this led to the accumulation of capital. And with the inventions of corporate safety measures, such as we know now the LLC, like limited liability corporation, which protects the investor's personal asset, even if their company fails. This protection made it easier for businesses to expand and for investors to participate without risking their private assets and like everything they own, right? And this would encourage investors and businesses to take those financial risks and support new ventures. And with the accumulation of capital being invested and the policy change, technology, um, obviously new technology boomed and inventions increased production, both production and like transportation, which generated massive amount of wealth and made people invest in further advancements. As we begin to see how new technology started to change the way people communicated and transported goods, Innovations such as the telegraph and the railroad made it possible to send information faster and transport products across long distance much more efficiently. And because of this, production and consumption no longer had to happen in the same place, which is what we meant by the unbundling of product. These improvements increased efficiency and helped push economy towards a more connected global system. And that's where global integration comes in. So as we said, like more and more countries joined free trade. People saw the benefit of free trade and they either joined voluntarily or in some cases, such as like Japan, right? We in the book it's called a strategic adaptation, or China, which was forced to participate in the trade by uh, British and French and other countries like military forces. And finally, these rapid changes of industrialization created pressure for social and economic reform. Workers formed trade unions to push for better wages and safer working conditions. And governments introduced early welfare programs such as the health insurance and accident insurance. Public health became more important as city built modern sewer systems and adapted germ theories to protect growing populations. And at the same time, government passed antitrust laws to prevent monopolies and try to maintain that fair competition. And these reforms help stabilize both the social and or both society and the market. So leading back to, new policies and, the cycle just repeats.
Okay, so I'm going to be speaking about a common misconception when it comes to trade. So, the most common misconception that we see is that everybody had a fair and equal opportunity when participating in trade. However, that was not always the case. We see that many times throughout this article, countries with more power and resources are able to impose tariffs on other countries experiencing more of a marginal benefit. And often these countries are imperial countries that are doing imposing these tariffs. And we also see that certain countries force other countries to take trades that only benefit the one country. So an example of this in the article was how Britain forced China to import 6,000 tons of opium a year. So, and if they didn't let Britain import this opium to China, they were going to declare war on them. So, this is just a clear example of how an imperial country was using their power to disbenefit another country. And then another real life data example that's happening today is the subsidization of farmers. So we see that the EU and the United States financially subsidize the majority of farmers, which means that they will be producing more compared to countries that are not able to spend nearly as much on this. They will see a lot less production. So this is why imperial and colonial countries have an inherent advantage because they manipulate countries with less power.
So here are some key takeaways. So first will be trade and technology drove growth, but not fairness. Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit, Calsyanna?
Um, well, yeah, it kind of like we said before, trade and technology, like throughout the chapter, it explains how it wasn't really fair, even though we were improving, it wasn't like equally distributed. Um, Another key takeaway is like global trade and industrial technology accelerated through economic growth. Um, Institutions and policies shaped who benefited and who didn't. Inequality emerged across countries, classes, and regions. Policy choices mattered for workers, markets, and living standards. The big three of this chapter to remember is trade, technology, and institutions.
All right. Thank you guys for listening to our podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.